Today's learning, just give me a second. Today's learning is generously sponsored by AB and Dawn Pomeranz in commemoration of the first yahrzeit of the beloved mother, Chavi Pomeranz, Chava Rochel Bas Akiva, the Neshama Zalaban and Aliyah. It's also for Refuah Shlema for my granddaughter, Hinda Bracha Bas Sinagolda, and Refuah Shlema for Yosef Bas Sarah, our wonderful colleague Jeff Karp, who should Mitzvah Hashem be back learning with us shortly. Very good. Okay, now let me plug in my phone, and we're ready to go.
All right, 4A1.
Okay, here we go. We're up to the Gemara. So, here we go. The Mishnah said, "Afal pi she'amru," even though we said that obviously Ketanim do not have to give the machzis shekel. Children do not have to give machzis shekel. If they give it, we accept it. Which means, says the Gemara, boya ain't tovin. But we're to demand it from them. We certainly do not demand the money from them. They don't have to be part of the whole collection of the machzis shekel. So, like the Gemara, in the previous Mishnah, it seems to say you should demand a half shekel from the minors. But here you seem to say that you should not demand the machzah shekel from them. And says the Gemara, Kan shehevi shtei saris, the Kan shaloi hevi shtei saris. We're talking about the difference. Did they grow up or did they not grow up? Where they sprouted 2 pubic hairs, okay, then we start demanding. Where they didn't sprout 2 hairs, even if they're already of age, 12 and 13, we're not going to freak out. Says the Gemara Vaita, Hanochri va'akusi. An adulterer and a kusi, we do not accept the machzah shekel from them. And we went on to say further, we do not accept from them any karbonei chayvei, any karbonos, offerings that are achiyuv, that are obligations that you must bring. For an example, the ophis, the birds that are brought for the zavim, zavais, women who had given birth, or the chatas and the osham offerings that are obviously chiyuvim, that you're obligated to bring. Now, the question is about the kusim. The kusis were an Assyrian tribe that were incorporated in, who converted because they were afraid of lions, etc. But their conversion was, they within a generation, they slipped back into Avodah Zarah. So the question was the Kusim Jews or the Kusim not Jews? So says the Gemara, our Mishnah says, that Kusim, we do not accept the Chamatzah shekel from the Kusim. Says the Gemara, Amar Abba, Tipsum Kemandi Amar Kusi Kinachri. You should interpret the Mishnah that it's going according to the Mandi Amar that Kusim are in fact not Jews, but that remained adulterers, and that their gerus was never a gerus. The mispalgi, because the truth is we have a machlokes in what Kusim are. Kusi Kinachri Divrei Rebbe. Kusi Ki Yisrael L'chol Davar. No, in fact, Kusim are Jews for all matters, which therefore means that their gerus was a gerus, and once somebody is a Jew, he's a Jew forever. His kedusha does not fall off. And in fact, I'm going to be sending out a little later, right after the Shir, a vart on this week's Parshas Tzav, and that's exactly going to be the topic that if you look into the Parsha, you see that the Jew becomes the Kedushas HaGuf. He's intrinsically Kodesh, and so that his Kedusha never falls away. And Yisrael, Afal Pi Shechatu Yisrael, a Jew, even if he sins, remains a Jew. It's automatic. And so that's what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel holds. So our Mishnah follows like Rebbe. Therefore it holds that a Kusi, just like a regular Akum, we cannot contribute to Machzis HaShekel. And right, and as well, anything that's mandatory, a mandatory offering, sacrificial offering, i.e., something which one is mechuyev to bring, a Zav, a Zava, a Yoledes, or a Chatas and an Osham, that they're not involved in. Amar Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Elazar is also Rebbe Elazar. So now you know where we come up with the name Laser. It's right here. It came from the Yerushalmi. This is where it's coming from. That Eliezer's or Elazar's become Lasers. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Masnisim B'Nachi. Our Mishnah concerning the mandatory offerings, that means the offerings that you're mechuyev to bring, is said only regarding avodah zarah goyim, ahag b'kusim loy, but not by kusim. In other words, our Mishnah could very well be following that kusim are not regarded as avodah zarah, not as goyim, but as full-fledged gerin. In which case, if they bring the mandatory offerings, they're accepted. The Tani came, and we learned it in a brisa, when it says over there, the pasuk, when it says in the pasuk, Daber b'nei Yisrael v'yamato aleim, Odom ki yaakov mikem korban Hashem. If a man will bring a korban to Hashem, Odom, the rabbi says again, and Odom means to include converts. Mikem lahoitzies emumorim, to exclude renegades. That means somebody who completely is turned away from the Torah, who is either been over on idolatry or in not keeping Shabbos. Okay, that is somebody who deliberately transgresses the Shabbos in public. 4A4. We just turned the page, and if you take a look in the art scroll, that's exactly right there on top. The first line in the art scroll on 4A4, who deliberately transgresses the Shabbos in public. That is from the Shita of the Rambam. So that, it's what is important there is to notice deliberately transgresses the Shabbos in public. That means not somebody who is a tinnik shenishba, who never learned the halachas, who doesn't understand it all, but who goes with a certain hatred and deliberately goes out of his way to desecrate the Shabbos. He's on the level of an adulterer. So great is the Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Masnisi pligi al Rabbi Elazar. And the Mishnah itself is a difficulty to Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar is Rabbi Elazar. So that's the same person. Okay? Ein mikabel miyodam koni zovim b'zovos koni yovados. We do not accept in their hands the bird offerings of the zovim or zovos or a woman who gave birth. V'chiyesh koni zovim b'zovos b'nachrin. Is there such a thing as a bird offering by goyim? Absolutely not. They don't have a din of zav and zava. There's no tumah and tumah situation by them. That's purely a Jewish idea, right? So it doesn't make any sense. They're not involved in this. Therefore, the Mishnah must only be talking about by kusim, right? But does not apply by adulterers at all. This is an exact opposition to the Shita of Rabbi Elazar, right? Rabbi Elazar said that in fact, kusim, if they want to bring an obligated offering, they're allowed to, because in fact they're full-fledged gerim. Says up to Gemara. So therefore, Gemara says, "Reisha b'nachrim b'sefer b'kusim." But then you want to tell me that the Mishnah is breaking itself into two different pieces. That the first part is talking about what he called goyim, and the second aspect is talking about kusim. Dr. Gemara, yes. Kainu, that sometimes it works that way. Reisha b'nachrim b'sefer b'kusim. Now, we said before that we do not accept donations. So
let me ask you a question.
Yes.
So that means that's the way we accept understanding the Mishnah.
Yes, that is the way we're understanding the Mishnah. That in fact, the editing in the Mishnah...
Because when they stop the topic, it's over.
It's over. And many times in Shas, we're going to find exactly this question. The ratio is like this man, the Yom, and the Sefer is like this man.
Right.
And the Mishnah says yes. So in other words, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it is certainly an answer. When you back yourself into a corner where you have no other way but to explain the Mishnah as that part of the Mishnah is going to one Shita and the other part of the Mishnah is going to another shita, we say yes, it could be that when Rebbe HaKadosh wrote it up, that's what he had in mind. And again, the idea is if you can't prove the other way, that's the way it is. So now we said before that on the Bedek Kabayis, that Goyim cannot donate for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. They couldn't give for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. And again, I'm going to just remind everybody, even though we said it before the last time, it's really the Mishnah in Ezra by Yomi Lehem Zerubabel, the Yeshua v'Shar Rosh obviously Yisrael. Loi lochem v'lonu livnais Beis Elokeinu. It's not to them or you to build the Beis Hamikdash. Ki anachnu yachad nivna Hashem Elokei Yisrael. We alone are responsible for building the Beis Hamikdash. So, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, we're going to see this pasuk on Dalet on the days. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, B'tchila, when the Beis Hamikdash was being built, i.e., the second Beis Hamikdash was being built, Ein mekabra mehem, we did not accept anything from them. Loy davar misuyam, neither distinctive objects, loy davar she'einu misuyam, nor donations that were not distinctive. Okay, so not whether donations that were big ticket items that would be obvious, or even money which is not distinctive, we didn't accept from them. Ubisayif, after the Beis Hamikdash was built, we did accept objects that were not distinctive, i.e., let's say money, but we did not accept from them distinctive items, let's say a keli, a utensil to use within the Beis Hamikdash. Shimon ben Lakish, no. Whether in the beginning or the end, we do not accept any donations from them. Neither donations of a distinctive object, nor things that were not distinctive like money. It didn't matter. We never accepted, not when it was being built and not afterwards. So says the Gemara Masnisim Pligi Rabbi Yochanan. I've got a baraisa that proves out difficult according to Rabbi Yochanan. Says the baraisa, Ein mekabla mehem hegdish unedabel lebedek kabayis. We do not accept from the Goyim. We're now on 4A5. We do not accept from them concentrated donations that will make hegdish for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. Now, the baraisa does not differentiate between donations given at the beginning while it was being built, or whether at the end after it was built. It just means a blanket statement that we do not take donations from Goyim. Is a bizarre, that's a kash or no? We could explain the rights. It is talking about both when it was being built and after it was built, and we're only talking about distinctive objects, because even Rabbi Yochanan agrees that a distinctive object we do not accept from them no matter what. But money for the upkeep, we do accept from them after the Beis Hamikdash was built. So the brayso itself, from the wording of the brayso, is not a question on Rabbi Yochanan. Says the second answer, or you could explain the brayso at the beginning. Shafilu moisav, even their money, the truth is you throw it into the Red Sea because it is not accepted, because it was the beginning of the building of the Beis Hamikdash. Just give me a second. Okay, thank you. So the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, Charlie, I see on my screen, by the way, you're frozen, so I'm hoping that you're hearing. I can't be sure. Okay, you are. You're good? Okay, good. Okay, all right, great. So now we go further. Rab Shimon, I thought you texted me that you got cut off. Rab Shimon ben Lakish said, Bein b'chilo, bein b'soif, whether when we're building the Beis Hamikdash or when it's already built, ein mekabel mehem, loy davar misuyim, loy davar she'einu misuyim, nothing, not distinctive objects, not money, not an issue. Masnisim pligi Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. Now I've got a brayso that's a problem to Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. Rab Shimon ben Lakish. The Tanya, because it says, "Hakol shovin shehein noidrin b'nodrin." All agree that goyim can affect donated vows and can be subject to donated vows, which seems to say that they could go ahead and bring nedarim and nedavos. They could donate nedavos. What do you call it? They could donate nedavos vows, which is not according to Reish Lakish, which said that they cannot. So, and for the Gemara, Apostle Oila, we're talking about when they bring an Oila. An Oila, as we know, is this week's parsha. Zois Toras Oila. That's the second pasuk in this week's parsha. Zois Toras Oila. An Oila is completely different, and that all of it goes on the Mizbeach. Everything. Okay. Going to log in. All right, everybody, I'm getting out because people cannot see me, so I'm going to re-log in. Okay, here we go. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Okay, I just re-logged in. Okay, let me see. Charlie, can you re-log? Charlie, can you hear me? Re-logged. Let's see. Charlie, can you hear me or not? What's going on? Can you hear me or not? Oh no. You could hear me. You can hear me. Okay. So, all right, you can hear me? Let me just make sure. Yeah, okay. So there we go. Can you hear me? This is a great way. Here we go. Okay. So we're going to continue. So says over here we have a brisa that clearly says that Goyim could give Nedarim and Nedavos. What it called? They could be involved in donation vows, which means they can bring, and for the Gemara, Posaloi Oila. We're talking about the Oila offering, a Nidvas Oila, which is this week's parasha. This week's parasha is Zeis Toras Oila, and an Oila which goes completely to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nothing goes to the Kohen. It gets all brought up on the Mizbeach, and if that's the case, everybody agrees that even Goyim are allowed to. So says the Gemara, that's great that they could affect donated vows as referring to the oila. Nedarim oila. How does that work? They could be subject to a donated vow. That can't be referring to an oila. For an oila vow that's placed on a goy, it certainly does not take effect. In other words, if a Jew comes along and says, "Hey, that guy is now mechuyev to bring an oila nedava," obviously the guy is not going to bring it. In other words, it's as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom in the Taklin Chadatim. It says, "Mi motzi leukmin nidrin ba'oila the imha yisro." If the Yisrael goes in and says, "Hey, my partner over here, the guy, should bring an oil," you think the guy is going to listen? So how do you explain the words of the Brisa? So we're up to 4A5. Ella and his 2 ways of learning the following Gemara. Okay, we're on 4A6. Excuse me. 4A6. Charlie, can you hear? I'm going to make sure. Charlie, can you hear? Yeah, good. Okay.
I
so
can hear
4A6.
Yitzchak, I can hear you, but I'm muting because people are talking in the house.
Got it. Okay, great. But if you can't hear me, do me a favor, text me if we break down again. Okay? Very good. Elo, Kisha'arma Yisrael, Harei Olai Oila. It's talking about where a Jew says that it's upon me to bring an oila. V'shama nochri, and the goy hears, v'oma ma shama ze'olai. What this one stated should be on me. So he's taking on the responsibility. He's saying, this Jew, my partner, the Jew, went ahead and was menadev, a oilo, and I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to take care of it. That's one way of learning. The Taklin Chadatin and the Hagoyis Agrov say just the opposite. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines from the bottom. Kisha'oma nochri, mash omer elai, hainu, nidrin, shayidei hanochri nidr. That it's actually the guy that says, I'm going to bring an oila. And the Jew comes along and says, oh, what the guy just said, I'm responsible for. That's what we're really talking about over here. Okay, so in other words, at the end of the day, we're all talking about oilers, and everybody agrees when it comes to oilers, even the guy can bring, or if they say they're going to bring, and a Jew comes along and takes achrayus, takes responsibility, then the Jew has mechuyev to go ahead and bring that carbon. Now, the Gemara just explained that when the Mishnah says that goyim can bring donated vows, it's referring to the oila. So now we have a question on Rav Shimon ben Lakish. The einu maybe imay nesachim, and when they bring the oilers, do they not bring also the nesachim that comes along with the oila, the wine libation that comes along with the oila? And the excess of the nesachim, if they brought too much nesachim, do we not use the extra to buy new klei asharis, new vessels to be used in the service? Of course we do. Therefore, nimsa may be double misuyim. So you see, and she'ena mitzvah misuyim. So you see from over here that a guy can even go ahead and bring an object that's not distinctive from the excess of the nesachim. So how could Reb Shimon ben Lakish say we accept nothing from them? Says the Gemara, Hasiv Rav Yosef Barabun V'Hatanin, and we learned in the Mishnah. Nerochin, goyim can be subject to an erech vow. In the Torah, every human being is given a certain value, from 0 to 5, 8 years, from 5 to 20, from 20 to 60, and goyim are included in that, so they can be subject to an erech vow. Now, is it an erech vow, an erechin vow, used for the upkeep, for the bedek habayis, for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash? Yet you see the Mishnah allows them to be involved in this. Kasha on Reish Lakish. Say Elamai. This is how we're going to explain. Hey Chmad the Oma Tamon. Rather, you must say that there is 4A7 L'Shemayim Hu Mischavim. The guy had in mind to give to the divine, to give to Hashem Yisparach. He didn't specifically say it's for the Bedek Habayis. On the contrary, he thought his money is going for offerings, because that's what they understand. And by itself, it happens to come to be used for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. It's accepted. Over here too, by the excess of the nesachim, when we say we use its excess to buy klei ashares, vessels to be used for the service, the guy intended it for the divine. We are now on Dalit Amud Beis. He intended it for the divine to use for a carbon. And by itself, it ended up to be used for a klei asharis. In such a case where it's not worked out like that, where the guy did not specifically say it's for the upkeep, and did not specifically say it's for the vessels, it's okay if it ultimately his money ends up being used for those things. Okay? Now the Gemara goes like this. Reb Shimon ben Lakish Posala. How did Reb Shimon ben Lakish say that we never accept any types of donations from them, whether while the Beis Hamikdash was being built or the Beis Hamikdash wasn't being built? This is the pasuk I mentioned before. It's not for you and for us to build a house for Hashem. Rather, we alone will build together for Hashem. Rav Chizki Amar Rav Simon Shoel. Rav Chizki in the name of Rav Simon asked, Umeyato. Now that we said that they should not donate to the base Hamikdash, then we should also not accept donations for the stream of water. This was the stream that was right outside the Beis Hamikdash that was used to wash the stuff in the Beis Hamikdash and to throw things away, and where the blood from the yayin from the mizbeach drained into that stream of water, which obviously needed to be constantly maintained. We do not take their money to maintain that. For the city walls and their towers, Yerushalayim is to be built by us. Al Shem v'lochem ein chelek. And for you, there is no portion or merit in the remembrance of Yerushalayim. And so that's where we go. Now, the reality is we don't actually, this is not exactly the way we paskin. We hold that now, as long as it's not distinctive, apparently we are allowed to accept them. It says the Gemara, and the Mishnah said, Elu chayovim b'kalvon. These are the people who have to pay the extra kalvon. So again, a quick review on a kalvon. We know this. Everybody had to give a maxis a shekel, a half a shekel. 2 shekels equal a selah. So many times a person would come with a selah to the money changer, to the banker, and ask for change of 2 shekalim. The problem with that is, normally in the year, that makes perfect sense. In other words, 2 shekalim equal a selah. The problem with that is that in Adar, there's a supply and demand situation. Since everybody had to bring the actual Machzis HaShekel, there was a run on silver dollars. There was a run on the Machzis HaShekel. So the actual value of each, the intrinsic value of each individual Machzis HaShekel was slightly higher than before, which means that 2 individual shekels are in fact worth more than a selah. So therefore the kalboin had to come to cover this difference. Here we see Chazal's great genius. They already had the idea, of course, of the present value of $1 versus the future value of $1. They already had the idea of inflation and supply and demand and its effect on the economy, both macro and micro. So that's what the kalbon was. The kalbon was nothing. It was a very small amount, but it's not the point. You had to cover for the inflation rate because you had to give exactly a machzah shekel. And frankly, the banker needed to cover his costs, right? By giving away the 2 machzah shekel to you and accepting his selah, he's actually lost, because in Adar, the selah is actually worth less than the 2 machzah shekels. So says the Gemara like this. My time of the Rameh. What's the time of Rameh? Because the Mishnah went on to say like this: a person who contributes a shekel for himself and his chaver, the Tana Kama says he's obligated to pay only 1 kalbon. Rameh holds he has to pay 2 kablonos. 2. The Amar Rameh, because Rameh says kishem shishaklu Torah, just like the Torah made the machzis hashekel is a biblical obligation. You should know kach kablanei Torah, that the kalbon is also min Torah. So therefore, every contribution of a half shekel requires a half shekel plus a kalbon, a small amount to cover. Since you're giving for you and your friend, therefore it needs 2 kalbons. Kesavar Ameir, b'noisen shakli sholem. It's regarding one who contributed a selah. A shakli sholem means a whole shekel means a selah. A selah which is worth 2.5 is worth 2.5 shekalim to him and his fellow. And we're on 4b2. Shehu chayiv shnei korbanos. He's chayiv 2 korbanos. Why? Because the way we just explained. The Rameya Kimin Matbeya Shalesh Hoitzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mitachas Kisei Kevodo. The Holy One, bless His name, removed a coin of fire from underneath His throne of glory. Very real to Moshe and showed it to Moshe. V'amru Zeh, this Yitnu you shall give, which means Kizeh Yitnu, like a coin like this. I.e., what does it mean a coin like this? What does it mean a coin like this? It means that a half shekel must be donated. In other words, not a selah. I can't cover with a selah. If I'm giving for 2 people, and I give a selah, which logically is 2 chatzi shekels, so it should work. Nonetheless, we say no. Because in reality, you must give the coinage, because zeh this coinage. So therefore, we're looking at 2 transactions. It's not 1 selah, it's 2 chatzi shekels. And since 2 chatzi shekels, minat Torah, you also have to bring a carbine according to Rameya. So you also have to go and bring a carbine for each machzis shekel. So when our selah, which equals 2 machzis shekel, being brought for 2 people, you got to bring 2 carbines. Says the Mishnah further. Okay? No san selah lito shekel chayiv shnei karbonos. If one contributed a selah for himself and takes a chatzi shekel in change because he's only giving for 1 person, he's liable for 2 karbonos. He's liable for all karbonos. So Amar Rabbi Elazar, this again must be the Rameyahi. This that it says you're required to pay even when you're only giving for yourself, but you gave a selah and you got change of a chatzi shekel, you still have to pay 2 korbanos. The Rameyahi, the Amar Rameya, echad shekel shuhu naisen. 1 korban is for the shekel that he gives, because biblically he's got to do that. The echad of divrei Torah. 1 he's got to do because of divrei Torah. Every time you give him a shekel, you have to give a korban. That's just a fact. Why? Because every machzis shekel has to have the weight of a machzis shekel. Today we do not think about our coins in not only in their value, but in their intrinsic value. But the machzis shekel has 2 parts. It has to be valued a machzis shekel, a half a shekel, 2 shekels to the seller. But the coinage itself has to have in it, the metal in it has to be valued a machzis shekel. Since obviously coins in the pocket tend to wear out, so minat Torah, you have to bring a cowboy to make sure that you're giving a true value of a machzis shekel. But on the other hand, the banker, you gave the banker a selah. He gave you back in change a half a shekel. He lost out because half shekels today have an inflationary value because supply and demand. So the banker, his selah that you gave him is not worth the same amount as 2 shekalim today, this month. So you got to cover. So Rameya says, number 1, shekel u'noisen, from the shekel that he gives, you got to give, and the echel of Torah. The Tanya, because we learned, elu chayovim bekalboy, kalboy echel. If one contributes a selah and takes a chmatzis, a shekel and change, the Chachamim say he only has to give 1 kalboy. That's only to the banker, because the Chachamim hold the kalboy is only midrabanan. You got to cover only the cost of the banker. The mayor is shnei kalbonos. No, you got to give 2 kalbonos, 1 for the banker and 1 for the minat Torah dikadin, that we don't want to make sure that the coin didn't wear out and has less than a machzis shekel. We have to give a kalboy. Ravam v'Ravama divrei hakoli. In fact, it's everybody. We're on 4b3. 4b3. Then, even the Tanakhama agrees. Echad shekel shuhu noising, that 1 korban is given for the shekel that he gives. The echad shekel shuhu noito, and 1 korban is given for what he takes. In other words, even if you hold it to Rabbanon, there are in fact 2 transactions. When I give a selah to the banker, it's made up of 2 machzas shekel. Well, it turns out you gave 1 machzas shekel to the banker. You got to cover for his costs, and the banker gives you back 1, and you're giving that 1 in, and you have to get, and you got to cover for that cost. Since in reality you've got 2 different transactions, you gave and you're given. Each transaction gets a carbon attached to it. And says the Gemara, al data de Rav, and according to Rav Meir, in that case, shloisha korbanos inun, because Rav Meir holds I've got a d'oraisa. So number 1, automatically, when I give a machzas shekel, I've got to give biblically an extra carbon to cover for the wear and tear on the coinage itself. And then secondly, midrabanan, I've got to give for both sides of the transaction. In other words, double entry accounting did not come from the Italians in the 15th century. It actually came from Chazal. Chazal said that every transaction has 2 sides to it. There is you're giving something and you're taking something. Each transaction has to cover the carbon. That's it. It's a double entry account. Also, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Kilms Rabbi Yirmiyah, and Rabbi Shmuel Bari, Rabbi Yitzchak V'Shem Rav, Shloisha Karbonos Inun. According to Rabbi Meir, there are 3 components. Echad shekel shu noisen, for the shekel that he gives, the echad shekel shu noitel, and the shekel that he takes, the echad the divrei Torah, the dvar Torah for the biblical requirement to give. Very good. Now, we have to give an introduction, and this introduction, though it's here in Shekalim, is a Shas Sugya. Here it's being applied to the machzas shekel. The Mishnah said that if there is an estate, okay, there is an estate, the brothers who inherit the estate have to, it goes like this: if they have to pay the carbon, they're exempt from bringing Maisa Behema. When they have to bring Maisa Behema, they're exempt from paying the carbon. What's Maisa Behema? New animals are born, right, in the pen. Every 10th, they went through a shoot. Every 10th animal was marked and had to be brought as Maisa Behema, a tithe of the animals. Now, the Mishnah did not explain this. So here's the situation. Okay? An estate is called Tefisas Habayis, the estate of the house. As long as that estate is still in existence, it's as if the father who passed away is still in existence. Since a father, listen to this, since a father, by definition, is allowed to give the machzas shekel on behalf of his children, bidin matana, he's allowed to give a present of a machzas shekel on behalf of his children, and presents do not require a carbon. We had that 2 Mishnahs ago, that presents do not have to give a carbon. So that's, in that case, it turns out that if it's in an estate and it had not yet been separated out, and had not been, and the Yerusha had not yet been split, what do you call it? It still remains in the estate, and it does not have to pay a carbon. If it doesn't have to pay a carbon, it does mean, however, it's because an estate is an individualistic unit. It has to pay taxes like an individual, right? You file an estate tax return. It's an individual. So therefore, any new animals that were bought within the estate are required to do Maisa Behema. Because who is potter from bringing a Maisa Behema? Only Shutfim, partners, or Lekeach, those who purchased the new animals, they don't have to go ahead and bring the Maisa Behema. But this is nothing. But once we have the split, once we split them and we go, now we have a different situation. So now the Gemara says as follows: Ha'achim v'ashutfim, brothers who are also partners in their father's estate. So here's case number one. Shechayovin b'kalboin u'b'torah mimaisa behema, who are chayav in a kalboin, but are part of therefore from maisa behema. You know what the case is? Shecholku, they split the estate, so now there's no more estate. It went, part of it went to Reuven, part of it went to Shimon, v'chazru v'nishtatfu, and then they came back together in a partnership. The original estate was dissolved and a new partnership was formed. So now all the estate's assets are owned by the brothers in a partnership. The assets, not the money. Money went into their pocket, but the animals and the real estate are in partnership. Because the animals are owned by a partner, they're not subject to Meiser, because Meiser Behema is only on individuals, not on animals that are owned as a partnership. Because the half shekel was paid by the brothers from their own assets, because the money of the father went into each of their own bank accounts, they're only partners in the actual assets, i.e. the real assets, the livestock. And the real estate, the money is their own. Well, the money is their own, but they're required to pay a cowboy. Now the other side. This which they're required to pay, to take the Maisa Behema, but exempt from paying the cowboy, where they did not divide the estate. A non-divided estate is not a partnership of his, but is an individual legal entity still belonging to the father. Since the fathers are not, or since the animals are not owned by a partner, but are owned by the individual entity known as the estate, therefore, of course, the mechayev to pay, to give the Maisa Behema. But since the estate is the estate of the father, and it's the father's money that's paying everybody's machzas shekel, a father is allowed to pay a child's machzas shekel as a present and not be responsible to pay the cowboy. Very good. B4. Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Elazar, v'hein shecholkim gedoyim. We're on 4B4. V'chein shecholkim gedoyim. Keneged tiyoshim, v'tiyoshim keneged gedoyim. This that we said, that they divided, and then they went back into partnership, exempts the brothers from bringing the Maisa Behema, is when the brothers divided the kids against the rams and the rams against the kids. One brother only took the rams and one brother only took the kids. By doing this, the brothers are in fact purchasing. They're considered ha'achim lekuchim, as purchasers. They're buying the assets from one another, dissolving the original estate. When the brothers recombine the assets, they're creating a brand new partnership. In other words, they didn't split it evenly, 50-50, all the assets go 50% to me and 50% to you. They separated it out, actually. The goats, the young goats went to one brother, the sheep went to another brother, which means each one picked out what they wanted. It's as if they bought what they wanted from the estate and left over what they didn't want from the estate. So now that means the brothers are purchasers. The brothers are purchasers and now only combined. Two individual purchasers having no relationship with each other. Yes, they're brothers, but vis-a-vis monetary, they have no relationship with each other. They're now coming together as a brand new partnership. As purchasers and as partners, they're obviously exempt from the animal Maisa. Because we said anybody who purchases animals or anybody is a partnership with animals is part of from a Maisa Behema. Avo im cholku gedoyim keneged gedoyim v'ta'oshim keneged ta'oshim, meaning that they split an estate exactly right down the middle. 50% of all the assets went to one brother, Reuven, and 50% of the assets went to Shimon, another brother. Says Rabbi Elazar, Hu chelka nishar rishon. I say to you, yesh bereira. there is retroactive understanding. Huvra dava limafreya. Since the estate was split perfectly equally, it turns out that what did you do over here? You never bought anything from the estate. The estate was split exactly the way it normally is. Since that was the case, I look back and I say, that's the way it always was. In that case, in reality, now that you've come back together as partners, all you've done is reconstituted the original estate. The original estate had 100% of a mix of assets. You split it by simply drawing the lines through these mixed assets. 50% of the mixed assets go one way, 50% of the assets go to the other brother. And now you're simply bringing it back together. All you've done is recreate the original estate. If you recreated the original estate, they're not partners, but they're only heirs of an undivided estate. And therefore, of course, the estate is an individual. The estate is an individual entity. And therefore, it is mechuyev to pay ma'aser. It's mechuyev to pay ma'aser behema. On the other hand, because the money from the estate was actually deposited in each one's individual bank accounts, they didn't bring the money back together. Therefore, they would have to pay the machzah shekel plus the kalbon. They would have to do both. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, afilu choku gediyim neged gediyim, t'oshim keneged t'oshim. Even if you did split it equally right down the middle, I hold kilechulkas heim. Achim kilechulkas. I say the brothers are like purchasers. The brothers are like purchasers. Upata min amaisa and apata from ice. Because you know why? Rabbi Yochanan holds ein berera. There's no such thing as retroactive understanding. You can't tell me that my actions now explain what was really going on retroactively. So therefore, I can't do that. Therefore, if you split, it's a split. I don't really care. They're two individuals who have now come back and created a partnership. It's a brand new partnership. It's not a recreation of ein berera. It's not a recreation of the original partnership. And therefore, it's now a partnership and they're part of a ma'aser. Something that was an untithed animal that was purchased, was given over as a gift. Potter mi ma'aser behema is potter from ma'aser behema. Says the Gemara, Rab Chia, Amar Rab Yomi Abayah, Lo Maleis Nein Amrin. Why do we not say Pa'omim Shem Chayavim B'zeh B'zeh? Sometimes the brothers are mechuyev to pay both the ma'aser behema and the cowboy. We're on today's daf, Hey Yom and Aleph. And sometimes they're exempt from both this obligation and that obligation. And the Gemara explains. And again, please look in the art scope because we're taking out words. Hey Chabdina, what are we talking about? Where they divided the other properties, but did not divide the livestock. Now the chayv in both. The livestock are still part of the estate, which is an individual entity, so the chayv to pay ma'aser behema. The other assets, including the money, was split, so now it's in their pockets. They have to pay the machzah shekel from their own money, and therefore give the cowboy chayavim b'zeh b'zeh. If they split the lives of it, they did not split the money. Because now that they split the livestock and came together in a partnership, partners are parted from ma'aser behema, and the money is still part of the estate, and the estate is allowed to pay the children's machzah shekel as a present, and a present doesn't have a cowboy. Ramana says, Ramana, this which you say, that when they divide other property, but not the livestock, then you have to pay the cowboy. That That's only when the livestock was not the majority of the estate. But if the livestock is the majority of the assets, they are the predominant property. And then we say that the estate, that even if the money of the estate was divided, if the livestock was not, if they're the majority, we say in fact that no, the estate is completely intact. If the estate is completely intact, we say that the money in fact is still being paid from the estate, and therefore they don't have to pay the cowboy. Says the Gemara, Rav Abin Bar Shimei Bayi, just because you treat the brother as one person with regard to animal ma'aser, you're going to pater him from the carbon. It's two different, but they're two different individuals. Each one is still mechuyev to bring a matzah shekel. Since each one individually has his own chiyuv to bring a matzah shekel, why aren't we simply making him bring a carbine on the fact that he has a chiyuv to bring his own matzah shekel? Good question. In other words, the whole Gemara, why are you fighting with me? This whole Gemara of Yesh Bereira, Ein Bereira, are the brothers Lekuchos, are the Yarshim, what are they? Right? Forget that. The bottom line is each one has to bring a matzah shekel. If each one has to bring a matzah shekel, should have to pay a cowboy. Amalei, Roshanihi. Is this case not different than the usual case of two people who pay with one selah? True, Noisin Selah Achatz L'Shlema. He gives one whole selah from, in this case too, he's giving a whole selah from an undivided estate. Because the estate was never divided, it retains its independent identity as a single property under the ownership of the father. And therefore the father paid and they don't have to pay a carbon. Me'ata afilu cholku b'chazu v'nishtatfu. It means even if they divide the estate and then re-enter into a partnership, we say peturim in a carbon. They're parted from a carbon. Since they recombine the assets, the original estate has now been re-established. And therefore, it's like the father's paying. But we learn with regard where they divide and recombine the estate, just the opposite than a chayav and a cowboy and the and now we're on 5A2, it's where we're stopping at the end of the parak. Rabbi Bob B'Shem Abba Baravuna says we're going over here. He shnei akim shiyoshu es avihem hu shnei gisin shiyoshu es chamehem. Because I hold, and this brisa holds, that when they split and they split the assets, and now they're coming back together as a partnership, it's not like two. It's not like two brothers. In fact, the brothers are considered achim sheyorshu, who inherited, not that they purchased or anything else. And when they come back together, it's as if they're just like two brother-in-laws who are now coming together in a partnership, which means that they're all together. Hello, Charlie. Yeah, I'm heading to the Mishnah. I'm just heading to the end of the parak. Where did you lose me somewhere? So we'll do that right now. Amalei Rabbanan, it's Amalei Rabbanan to Rav Shammai. Lo Shanihi. Is this case no different than a case of two people, like me and you, that pay our matzah shekel with a single selah, right? In this case too. Shuhu noisei selah achatz l'shleimo. The estate is giving one selah. Since the estate is giving one selah, it's as if the estate was never divided, and it keeps its individual identity as an estate, as an individual estate, and it's therefore paying off the children's matzah shekel with one selah, and therefore you don't have to pay a kabbalah because it's a present. So says the Gemara, Me'ata, if that's the case, afilu cholku v'chazu v'nishtatfu, even divided and then re-entered into a partnership, paturim in a kalba, they should still be parted from a kalba. But the Tanina, but we learned in the Mishnah, chayav and bekalba and upatim and ma'aseh, but just the opposite, where they divide the estate and then we can't combine it in a partnership. In Kol Zeh, they're chayin and paying the Kalban and the pot and the Ma'aser Behema. So what's on? So now we're on 582. We're heading to the end. Rabbi Bo b'shem Abba bar Rav Huna. Rabbi Bo says in the name of Rabbi bar Rav Huna, Hi shnei achim sheyarshu es aviem. Hi shnei gisin sheyarshu es chameim. These two brothers who inherited their father and divided the assets are inheritors in the same as, and now they're coming back together to create a partnership. They're no different than two brother-in-laws who come together now in a partnership. Once, this Mishnah is saying, once they're split, ein bereira. We do not look back and say when they come back together, it's as if they're reconstituting the estate. They're two now individuals. They split. It's a brand new partnership. It's a brand new partnership. Oh, so now, of course, it's a brand new partnership. Therefore, it's a partnership. Therefore, they don't have to pay the Ma'aser Behema, but they have to pay the Kalban from their own money. Good. So now the Mishnah says, where did the money from the Kabbalah go? Like we've been saying, the Shekalim for the Kabbalah Sibor, the Tamid, the Musaf, it goes for voluntary offerings. That means when the Beis Hamikdash, the Mizbeach, was empty, for some reason no Kabbalas were being bought, we pull out money from here, we purchase a new behemoth, and we bring them as Nedavos. Rav Shimon Shazuri Omer, Rekike Zov, Tzaputze, Lebeis Kodesh HaKadoshim. The sheets of beaten gold that were used for plating the Holy of Holies, that's where it went. And Azay Omer, Shulochin Hoyenoitinos, the money changers would take them as their fee because they had to give up their time from their business to become money changers. Right? So therefore they had to get a fee. The Kalban was their fee. It says in fact, their traveling expenses, because they left Yerushalayim to go to these cities to go ahead and help collect and change the money. We should return to you. We should return to you. We should return to you. So now we are holding on today's daf Hey Amid Aleph. So the Hey is